Hello there, welcome back to the channel. The Star Trek universe is known for generally being space socialism. All things are good, humanity has overcome all of its problems, there's no more racism, there's no more sexism, there's no more isms of any kind. Everyone's happy, everybody is great, and that is great for humanity. But let us not forget, there are millions of other civilizations just in the Milky Way galaxy. Not all of them have overcome these problems, not all of them want to, not all of them see them as a problem. That's bad, but from a human point of view. That means that although humanity lives in this benevolent United Federation utopia of planets, there are things still lurking in the darkness. And we're going to look at some of the darker elements of Star Trek. We're not going to look at all of them because there's too many. There are plenty to choose from, and I've cherry picked some of the ones that I personally think are pretty bad. And that would be some of the worst fates to befall a person, human or otherwise, in the Star Trek universe. But let me know in the comments below of all the other ones that you can think of, because I guarantee there are more that I'm not thinking of, and a few that I wasn't sure whether or not to throw in the video. But by all means, chuck them in the comments below. If this video gets enough traction, maybe I'll do another one with some of those suggestions. But right now, let's get into it. Some of the worst fates, and these are in no particular order, so they're not like ranked worst to even worst. Let's start with good old slavery. And yes, slavery does still exist in the 24th century. No, it's not humans enslaving other humans, at least not as far as we know, although it's a big galaxy. You never know. Most slaves are held by some of the more malevolent races, some of the more aggressive, some of the races that are ethically not in alignment with the Federation. Slaves are still kept by such civilizations as the Orions, the Breen, and the Cardassians, to name just a few. And being at the tender mercies of any of these individuals is not a fate you would want to exactly fall into. The Orions, for example, are famed for their slave markets. Now, we do know Orion culture is built heavily around slavery, with it actually being something of a false culture, where we are actually seeing that they sell their own women into slavery, but in reality the women are the ones telling the men to do it, and it's actually a power play. They're used to integrate themselves close to wealthy businessmen and women and other powerful individuals from outside of Orion culture. That's a separate thing. That's not exactly the worst fate because they're willing. But if you're a human or a Bajoran or a Ferengi who's somehow ended up there, going to an Orion slave market, unless you're the buyer, and even then, not the best. Just being a slave in general is the worst. But with the Orions, it depends on who you get sold to. You get sold to a Ferengi, you'll probably be mistreated and not very well fed, but that might be the beginning and end of it. Get sold to an Orion, you'll probably be beaten up. Get sold to a Nausicaan, who knows what'll happen. The Cardassians, on the other hand, are known for their far more vicious treatment of their indoctrinated servants. And we're not going to repeat them because the lords of the YouTube algorithm don't allow me to say some of the words that the Cardassians have been reported to do to many of the people that are under their care. But we do know that the Cardassians exploited and ravaged their way across Bajor quite violently, with them basically treating all Bajorans at the bare minimum as a second-class citizen in Cardassian society, and at worst, open slaves. The Breen, again, noting them, have also been known to keep Bajoran and Cardassians as slaves. They don't really discriminate. And they will make you work in mines and other such unpleasant areas. Basically, being a slave sucks. You don't know if today's your last day, you don't know if you're going to be fed, you don't know if you get injured or you're just going to be killed, or you're going to receive medical care. You're never going to have your freedom. You're not ever going to be able to cooperate enough with your owners, say if they're Breen, to ever even have a glimmer of hope that you will ever be released. And that is a life not worth living. Rura Penthe. Rura Penthe is a Klingon prison, and again, being at the mercy of a Klingon warden doesn't sound pleasant in and of itself, but Rura Penthe is a gem amongst gems, a frozen world rich in dilithium and other minerals that the Klingon Empire is built on. Rura Penthe is where you send condemned prisoners who aren't technically condemned to death, but with an average life expectancy of just 3 months, unless you're the most vicious, badass, brutal, merciless Klingon, Nausicaan, Orion warrior imaginable who's going to survive down in those horrific pits. Pretty much, you're dead. As it was noted that with McCoy and Kirk being sentenced to a life imprisonment on Rura Penthe, they might as well have just taken them out back and shot them with a disruptor, because it would have been kinder. Life on Rura Penthe was difficult and hard. The guards don't care. You're not only at the mercy of what the guards might do to you, but you're at the mercy of what all the other prisoners will do to you. They'll take your food, your clothes, and your life. And going back to slavery, who knows, you could even end up as somebody's slave within that prison. It is not a pleasant place. It is infamous and legendary for its poor treatment and vicious environment. Not a place to want to end up. Becoming a Borg drone. Where do you even start with this one? This one may be my personal hell. The Federation cherishes freedom. Humanity cherishes freedom. Above all things, the right to self-determination, the right to believe what you want to believe, whether that's religious belief, social belief structures, personal beliefs, whatever. The right to know that if you choose to that day, you don't have to get out of bed. If you want to go shopping, you can go shopping. You don't want to go shopping, you don't go shopping. You don't go for a walk, you go for a walk. But being a Borg, it's not like that. All of who you were is soaked into the collective in a very painful and invasive way. They strip you down, they infect you with nanoprobes, they slowly convert your body into a cybernetic organism while you're still aware it's happening, until eventually that your consciousness is swallowed up by the collective. You forget who and what you really are, and you just become a Borg, and you do this to the next person. It's a living hell, and we do know that on a subconscious level, some of the drones still know who they are and still fight, and they exist in such synthetic environments as Unimatrix Zero, still longing for the days that they had control over their own body. But when awake, not regenerating, you've no control, you can't do what you want. If the collective orders you to beam aboard a ship full of, angry Jem'Hadar, you're not going to live very long. You know it, but you do it anyway. Your life is meaningless. You're beyond insignificant. And everything you have ever done in your life doesn't mean anything. You are just meat for the machine, or knowledge or skills that the collective wanted. And once they've got them from you, you're just a drone. Host to Baby Gorn. Being eaten alive from the inside by small ravenous reptilian aliens. I mean, I can pretty much end it at that, can't I? The Gorn are famous for infesting other sentient beings with their progeny. Why they only do that with sentient creatures is probably, my guess would be actually something of a misnomer. I bet that they can't. Their population wouldn't be sustainable. But whatever. If you are a human living in the 23rd or 24th century and the Gorn decide that they're going to make you mommy to their little bundle of joy, you're going to die slowly and painfully while this thing eats its way out of you, until eventually it literally bursts out of your body, killing you. Multiple of them, and then they'll kill each other, so you don't even get, the joy of your little bundle of joy going on to be more. It just becomes a little ravenous monster that hatches out of you, and you know it's happening. And before it happens, you've been hunted down by the Gorn, tracked by them, attacked by them, hurt by them. You're captured, and then you know what they're going to do to you. And even if they don't do that, the babies, once they're out, they grow quick. If you aren't the carrier, you're the prey. You're food for the little bastard as it comes after you. Something of a general fear within Star Trek. Transporter accident. More specifically, transporter death, dematerializing mistakes, having your atoms scattered. Now, we know that transporter psychosis is a pretty common thing within Star Trek anyway. People don't like to use transporters all the time. There's obviously that nonsense about how you're deconstructed and what's reconstructed at the other end is really just a copy of the original with your memories. It's not you. You are dead. But if you believe the original creator of the transporter on Earth, not to mention all the other races that use them, this is known to be utter nonsense. Metaphysical insanity, basically. But genuine fear, but not the real problem. Using a transporter on a daily basis, that's fine as long as it's working. If it's ever not quite working properly, being attacked by transporter aliens that exist in a sort of pocket dimension, or having your atoms scattered painfully and slowly, rematerializing inside of a wall, having detritus and debris picked up by the transporter beam and rematerializing with, you know, bugs and, you know, have you seen The Fly? So there's that. And then there's what we see happen to someone who tries to beam aboard the Enterprise refit, and they lose pattern cohesion, basically. The signal is dropped, and both the sender and the receiver can't capture them. They begin to materialize in screaming agony, and eventually they manage to send them back to the ground, and they live. Not for long, thankfully, in the words of the transporter operator on the other end. What they got back didn't live for long. What did they get back? That knowing that you're a sentient being, you know what a transporter does. You could feel it tearing your cells apart at the molecular level and not being able to put you back together. The fear and horror of that moment doesn't sound pleasant. Just going to throw in there a few honourable mentions. An obvious one, a lot of the future is in space. Space is big, space is vast, space is cold. You are completely reliant on that metal shell. I don't care how advanced it is. You're reliant on a big piece of metal with a huge energy reactor at its core, breaking the laws of physics, flying you through space at superluminal velocities, bending the universe around it. And if that ever breaks, you are light years from help. If you've no communication, no food, no power, you're floating around in an ever decreasing in temperature metal coffin in the middle of nowhere with no chance of ever being rescued. If you don't freeze to death, you'll suffocate. If you don't suffocate, you'll die of dehydration. If by some miracle you've got a bit of water which hasn't frozen and you don't die from that, you'll eventually starve to death or get eaten by the other members of your crew. I'm thinking of you, Ferengis. Then there's the usual Star Trek tradition, just wearing red. Worst ways to die in Star Trek. Who's volunteering for the away mission? Captain Kirk, Mr. Spock, Dr. McCoy, and Ensign Leadfoot, who we've never met before. Come on down. Let's go to the surface of this jungle planet infested with ape monsters. I'm sure we'll all be fine, won't we, Ensign Redshirt Sacrifice Person? And the final one, which I think may be one of the worst fates, I couldn't quite decide between these two, so I just thought I'd lump them together as one, because they're kinda similar. And that would be being a subject and conquered by either the Terran Empire or the Confederacy of Earth. Neither one of these powers seem particularly pleasant. The reason I use these as an example and not, say, the Klingons or the Romulans, who obviously being conquered by anybody is bad. Being part of anyone's empire is bad. We know relatively, actually, very little about how the Romulan Empire administrates its subjects, other than the Remans. And the Klingons are already covered with Rura Penthe. That's pretty much as bad as it gets under the Klingons. If they don't like you, they send you to Rura Penthe to work you to death. So the Terrans and the Confederacy, we know a little bit more. If you were, by chance, some alien species conquered by the Terrans, depending on your level of usefulness, you either end up as sort of a client state where maybe you get a chance for some of your citizens to willingly serve aboard a Starfleet vessel. Your own life will never really be meaningful and you'll always be a second-class citizen, but maybe you'll be a second-class, not third or fourth class above the other races. Or you're going to be like a Kelpian and they're going to eat you. That's right, Terrans eat some of the races they conquer. This doesn't seem pleasant. It doesn't seem like a fate befitting a sentient species. or an action or conduct befitting a sentient species for that matter. The Confederacy is far more racially intolerant even than the Terrans, going as far as every race is basically has to be controlled. The Confederacy, to be honest, always kind of has shades of the Dominion to it to me. Their fear of the other races, their fear of the alien, compelled them to conquer them. But those races end up in one of three states. Dead, completely exterminated if they're too troublesome, conquered and enslaved on some level, maybe with a few in positions of power, but generally speaking they'll enslave them, or they'll have you under their thumb and under their control like they did with the Vulcans and a few others. But races like the Borg and Cardassians who seem more troublesome, they simply obliterate. The Confederacy would not be the kind of empire you would want to fall under. A human-centric fascist regime that views humans and human culture as superior to everything else and is so clearly afraid of the alien that the only way they can deal with an alien civilization is to either annihilate it or conquer it. And if you are conquered by them, which annihilation is bad enough in and of itself, but if you are conquered by them, your life and the lives of your descendants, all the things listed above, except maybe becoming a Borg, you're going to suffer. For either the Terrans or the Confederacy. And to be honest, neither one of those sound particularly pleasant as a fate to end up in. So, again, that's bringing us to the end of this. What are your thoughts? What do you think are the worst fates that you can have in the Star Trek universe? As I said, there are a few others, sort of like trapped in dimensions and displaced in time, and a few other kind of rather unpleasant events that take place here and there. There are a few animals and creatures that we encounter that would rip you apart and leave you for dead, but then again, big alien monster eating you or grizzly bear eating you, really you're just getting eaten, what does it really matter? So, worst fates in Star Trek, any that I've missed, put them in the comments section below. Share this video around if you enjoyed it, please like, share and subscribe if you did. If you didn't enjoy the video, you've done well making it all the way to 18 minutes and 45 seconds. Woohoo! Well done, thank you. And bye-bye. I'd just like to say a thank you to everyone for watching that video. I hope you enjoyed it. I really enjoy making these. If you did enjoy it, please consider giving a like, share and a subscribe, and maybe checking out the other videos on the screen right now, and in the description box below there are links to my other social media accounts.